Hello and welcome to the Black Hat Bushcraft channel. Today I'm very excited to be out giving you a good look at and a review of the Pathfinder Knife Shop's latest release of the Kephart style knife. And this one is the Dirty by Design series, which was just recently released on the market. And the main difference between Dirty by Design edition and the previous was before the blade was all polished out, and this one has just been left tarnished from the heat treat process, which gives it more of a vintage look or a well-used look, and I really like that appearance. The other change, which I think is an upgrade, is the fact that they've switched to using curly maple for the handles. And you can see that's a little bit lighter colored wood, and you can see the grain of the wood a lot more, which I think is very attractive. Other than that, the knife I think is pretty similar to the previous design. There may have been some tweaks on geometry a little bit, but overall I'm very pleased with this knife, and since I got it I have literally not carried another knife on my hip, and I've made a point out of using this knife for something every single day. So I've had this knife in my hand every day for over a month. I've used it from everything from bushcrafting tasks, carving bow drill sets, carving all the stuff that you tend to carve, spoons and feather sticks and all that kind of stuff. I've even used it for food prep in my own kitchen, and it has excelled at everything that I've asked it to do. I will tell you guys right up front that I really like this knife, hence why I'm doing the review of it. I will say that I did pay my own money for this knife, and that no one has asked me to do this review, and I'm not being compensated by Self-Reliance Outfitters to promote the knife. I did want to make that clear because a lot of you may know that I am a certified instructor for the Pathfinder School, but I'm promoting this knife because I like it, because I enjoy using it, and again, it's not to be compensated in any way. And I'm promoting it because I think it's an excellent value and an excellent knife. Just before I get started on the demonstration with this knife, I thought I'd give you a closer look and a couple of basic specifications. This knife itself has been made from 1/8 of an inch thick 1095 high carbon steel, and the blade has been ground with a true Scandinavian grind. As far as I can see, there's no secondary bevel, which I really like because it's excellent for woodworking. However, the overall profile of this knife is exactly what you would expect with a traditional Kephart style design. You can see that spear point, which we always would recognize on a Kephart knife, which I think is excellent also for certain bushcraft tasks like drilling holes or making bow drill divots in the hearthboard, things like that. The back of the blade, the spine, has been ground to a perfect 90-degree angle, so it has a very sharp feel to it, and it does an excellent job of striking a ferrocerium rod or processing fat wood and other tinder type materials like that. The scales are curly maple scales, and they've been pinned in place with 2 pins, and even the lanyard hole has a brass tube insert, which is a really nice touch. If you run your finger across these seams where the wood and the metal meet, you can't feel that. You cannot tell where the wood and the metal start. It's just perfectly smoothed off, and it has an excellent feel in the hand. As far as the blade length, this is a 4 1/4 cutting edge, and the overall length of the knife is 9 inches. With all that said, let's give it a little test run. What I have here is just a dry piece of tulip poplar wood, and this would be something that I might actually baton with a knife like this, just to get inside where the wood is dry for things like feather sticks or making bow drill sets. You can see that that's absolutely no problem for this knife. However, I'm not big on batoning wood, so I just use batoning lightly for things like processing dry tulip poplar or other soft woods that I'm going to use for bushcraft type tasks. So you can see that this is not a problem for the knife. So you can see what I'm getting there with those very fine fibers. That stuff will go up with the smallest of sparks from a ferrocerium rod. The spine on this knife does an excellent job of processing tinders like this. I did want to point out the beautiful simplicity in the design of this handle. You can see this ramp right here. When I hold this knife backwards in my hand, like a reverse chest lever type grip, my thumb just slides right to the perfect spot. You can see how it just fits right there in that spot. And the swell back here on the back of the handle actually rests right in this little crease of my palm, right here where my thumb connects in with the other part of my palm. It just rests perfectly, and I get such a secure hold to do things like these reverse chest lever cuts, where I'm trying to cut lots of wood off quickly and make points on things. The knife is just very secure and comfortable, no hot spot there, and just works perfect with the natural curvature of my hand. And I feel like it's such a generic type shape that even if your hands were smaller than mine, that your finger would find that perfect spot. Or if your hands were larger, that you'd find that perfect spot. Because it's such a gradual swell there, regardless of the size of your hand is naturally going to go to the right spot. So that's one of the things I really like about the design of this handle. One of the ways that I tend to use my bushcraft knife the most is with a draw cut. When I'm doing things like carving spoons or spatulas, and even feather sticks can be done this way. But notice again how the simplicity of this handle design allows my finger to find the perfect little spot. And with these little thumb scallops or ramps right here, my thumb fits perfect, and I get perfect control of the blade here. And then I can do those really fine cuts when I'm trying to finish off like a spatula or spoon and make those perfect cuts, not taking off too much material. That helps me to get the perfect finish to my project. And again, if I'm trying to carve really fine feather sticks or something, I can do that with this method as well. But the knife just naturally fits perfect with all those little subtle curves. It just perfectly mates with my hand. I have good control. And again, I feel like I could sit here and do this all day with no hot spots or no discomfort. Again, the simplicity is beautiful in the design of this knife. One of the first tasks that I like to perform with a new knife is just to carve a simple tent peg, because it involves a basic notch and just some basic carving techniques. So this is a piece of semi-green maple. Let's use that. And the stick is not perfectly straight, but I'm not using the tent peg anyway, so it's just to practice carving with the knife. Make that rocking cut right there. And I come in at that 45-degree angle. Of course, maple is a pretty firm wood, so if a knife performs well with that, then that's a good test for it. No problem there. Smooth off those edges a little bit. Come up here, take that top off, just so we don't break off our notch. And then some small things like just practicing chamfering the edge up the top so it doesn't mushroom out. Just gives you a little better idea about how a knife handles, how well you can control it. This one, again, feels excellent in my hand. Now things like reverse chest lever grip, just to kind of bite down in that wood to get my point carved. It's very comfortable with that. No hot spots against my hand. And with that Scandi grind, it really hogs that wood off to make that point. So you can see that's an acceptable tent stake other than the stick being curved. But no problem, the knife performs well doing those little basic tasks. I think it excels. You can see I've got a little start here on a pot hook, and the first part of doing this is pretty easy. The harder part is having the control to get down up under this point and clean that out for your hook. And this is a good test for this knife, just to see if it does a good job, like using the tip and getting down here and making those fine carving cuts for a task like this. And with that spear point, It's not quite as easy as, say, a more classic type knife, something that's real skinny like that, but it's very, very doable. You just kind of have to adjust your technique. But it's very, very capable of doing the task, as you'll see. You can see I got a pretty good hook there. Like that. So that spear point design does do a good job of getting down into these tighter little spaces and making those minute cuts for these bushcraft type tasks like this. I've got a few pieces of fat wood here that I processed. Let's see how this knife does processing that down for fire lighting. I always like to make a few shavings first and then have a few feathers too. And if I were really going to be lighting a fire, I'd probably go for a little more than this, but since we're just testing the knife, I think that'll suffice. Two strikes. You see it does a good job of throwing sparks. I know this may be a little bit of a controversial test, but it's one that I like to perform. After all that carving, you can see the knife is still, I haven't done anything to it, so is it still hair shaven sharp? After batoning fat wood, carving feather sticks, and so forth. Again, I know some people hate to see that, but it's a good test to me. I like to keep my knife hair shaving sharp, and after all that, this one's still holding that edge. So in the spirit of doing a review, I'm going to throw out just a couple of small little critiques on the knife that I think maybe could change it from an excellent knife to a perfect knife. One of the things I mentioned is these thumb scallops right here. And they are comfortable in my hand, but I feel like if they were just gradually beveled from just a little bit further back, that they might be slightly more comfortable. So while these are very steep and just right here at the last maybe quarter inch of the knife scale, I feel like if they came back maybe about a half inch and just beveled that off at a little bit more shallow angle, I think that that might be slightly more comfortable. With that said, again, these are comfortable. I just think that could be an improvement. There's one other thing here. There's a little bit of a lip, and it may be hard to see on the camera right here, and it's slightly sharp. And I think that that whole lip right there could just be rounded off. It doesn't have to be quite as pronounced. If I can get the camera to focus on that there. So that lip doesn't have to be quite as pronounced. It could be slightly rounded off. With that said, it doesn't bother me at all. And again, this is one of the most comfortable areas of the knife right here. So if I had to throw out a critique, that would be something that could be done. The only other thing that I can think of would be some people may not like these non-stabilized wood handles. A lot of people really like stabilized wood. It actually feels really good in the hand, and what I've done is basically every day, maybe I've missed a day here or there, but for like the last month, every day that I handle this knife, I rub a little bit of fixin' wax on the handle and massage it into the grain of the wood. And over the last several weeks, it started to take on just a slightly different feel as the oils and the wax is kind of soaked into the wood. It has just a little bit of a grippy feeling, which I really like, and I feel like that's helping to preserve that wood and keep it, like I said, preserved for the long haul. But other than that, I can't really think of anything that would make this a better knife. Just slightly polishing this little area right here. Again, slight adjustment to the thumb scales or thumb scallops on the scales. And again, if they offered stabilized wood, that might be an option. But other than that, I really can't think of anything else that would improve this knife to make it any better than it already is. If you purchase a knife from Self-Reliance Outfitters, you'll also have the option of purchasing a fitting leather sheath. This is the sheath that came with my knife. You can see that it's already wet formed to the sheath, and that's because the first day I actually carried this knife, I was teaching a Pathfinder class. We had torrential downpour rain, and my sheath got soaked all the way through. Fortunately, the knife sheath does have a little drain hole here, but my leather stayed wet for the whole weekend. I did continue to carry the knife in there. I got a little bit of surface rust on it. It cleaned right off and restored the knife back to the way it looked when I first got it. But I did go ahead and wet form that sheath that weekend while I was carrying it. And the only thing I've done since is just coated the inside as best I could and the outside with just my homemade fix and wax to help preserve it and help waterproof it a little bit if that should happen in the future. But it's not a custom leather sheath or anything like that, but it is a well-made, nice, heavy leather sheath, and definitely a good option if you need a sheath when you purchase the knife. All right, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to tune in for this review of the Pathfinder Knife Shop's Kephart blade, the Dirty by Design edition. And right now it's dirty, not by their design, but by my own. And I'm gonna take it home, clean it up, hone it up, get it ready for the next trip. I appreciate your interest, your support. I hope to be talking to you with another video again very soon. And until the next one, take care and God bless.